Hey guys, it's Matt Johnson here with another audio episode of Real Estate Uncensored, where you will learn how to combine the best high-tech and high-touch methods to turn your real estate career into a life of freedom. Now, this episode is called Meth, Painless Prospecting, and the Broken System. And the top three things you're going to take away are why leads are like meth to real estate agents, how you should focus on bringing value in your prospecting instead of trying to just get listings or appointments, and why you shouldn't really count on your broker for much of anything. And we'll talk about why that is. So if you like this type of content, do me a couple favors. Number one, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, and visit our website, McDanielRealEstateSystems.com, to stay up to date on everything, including our free group coaching calls every Thursday morning, our video course on farming, live prospecting sessions, and a bunch more. So let's get on with our special guest. Now, we interviewed Scot Kenkel. He's a real estate veteran. He's an author, trainer, coach. He's also the host of the podcast, Sell More Houses, which you need to subscribe to right now. Seriously, go to iTunes or YouTube and subscribe. This guy is a heavy hitter, and he had a lot to say about the industry as a whole and what you as an agent need to do to make a couple of key shifts, and why you shouldn't count on your broker to provide the training and the support that you need to get out there and actually succeed. So with that, let's get on with it. This is Scot Kenkel on Real Estate Uncensored. So Scot, let's start out. If you can just give people a quick background on who you are, where you are, how many years you've been in the business, what your focus is in the business, and how you've been able to stay in the business for this long by the types of clients that you work with.
My name, Scot Kenkel. I am a pretty average individual. I got into the real estate business after spending 10 years as an investor. The reason I got into the real estate business was, frankly, I thought it would bring me more opportunities, only to find out that most real estate agents, the overwhelming majority, somewhere around 99% of them, don't know anything about the world of investing. So once I got into the business, then I decided to try to master the business. And in searching around, trying to figure out what do you do, I took my training skills, because I used to be a door knocker for a siding company. And I had grown a successful home improvement business on a limited franchise agreement with Sears and Roebuck, and sold that out at the age of 29, and decided to do something different. So I decided to take real estate investing full time. Got into real estate. In real estate, within the first 30 days, it dawned on me that there really wasn't any control over how you did it. There was a very loosey-goosey kind of babysitting attitude. It seemed more like daycare for adults. I was in a traditional real estate office, and I quickly figured out that if I could go on appointments with people that owned a house, that I would be in a better position to be the lazy agent, because I didn't work evenings and I didn't work weekends, and I didn't want to work evenings and I didn't want to work weekends. So I hired 7 telemarketers and an appointment coordinator, and I started going on 6 appointments every week, Thursdays and Fridays only, none in the evening, none on the weekends. So I only worked 2 days a week. I hired a full-time assistant, and within about 60 days, I had more listings than the whole office combined, and they all hated me. From that point, I found that it was easy to get business, to get listings. That was easy. I hated doing paperwork, which is where Shelley came in. Mm-hmm. I hated playing the games, because I was immediately in trouble, because I had been sought out by some other companies to train their agents, but I wouldn't do it in my own city. I was in Cincinnati, Ohio. Mm-hmm. So I was in Michigan 3 days a week doing training. And I think that was by the 90-day mark. And my office manager, within the next 6 months, decided that she didn't like the fact that other agents didn't like me. I didn't play nice, because I was all business. I came in, I did my work. I had Shelley there to do all my stuff. And it probably became apparent to me within that short period that wasn't where I wanted to be. I enjoyed the business, figuring it out, but I didn't enjoy the pettiness.
Yeah.
And so from there, I started expanding my training. I maintained an active real estate license for a couple more years, and that was back in the late 80s. Since that time, I'd been asked to speak with almost every national franchise throughout the years. I've taken virtual tours and put them on the map. I worked for a startup company that became a $2 billion virtual tour operator. And the way I got agents to use virtual tours back before they could figure out how to use a computer, I showed them how to send an email, and I taught email marketing in a big way and was known as the email doctor. Continued on with my technology training, combined technology with contact management, was one of the biggest top producer trainers throughout the country, ran a training company called Superstar Computing, got it sold to another larger gobbled up company. And that was my experience. It was about 9 years ago, I had to stop traveling for personal reasons. I had some family issues that prevented me from traveling, so I only spoke at very special events. Decided to write a couple of books. One of them was How to List and Sell Short Sales. Another one on how to list and sell for sale by owners. And my next book coming out shortly is Painless Prospecting for the Real Estate Professional, How to Grow Your Business Without Going Broke. And there you have it.
Wow. That was a lot.
That was a mouthful.
That was a mouthful, but a lot of. That's awesome, though. So there's something that you said, and Greg, you can speak about this too. But so when you're in the office, you're going about getting your work done. You're taking more listings in the office combined. So obviously, people were not a huge fan of that. But let's talk about why that is, because there's something about the real estate industry that attracts a certain type of person. They come into the business with certain expectations of the way the business is and what they spend their time and their days doing. And you came in and basically showed them that's entirely wrong, and there's another way to do it. So what is it about the personality and the type of people that real estate attracts that led to that kind of blowback?
At the time, my opinion has changed a little bit over time, but what I found is I felt it was more of a social club atmosphere. The agents came into the office to kind of jibber jab with each other. This was in the days when we didn't really have a lot of technology to allow you to be a remote agent. So in those days, you got all your information at the office. We still had a printed MLS book. We had the online MLS access, but it was only from the dummy terminals. And so there was a reason why they came into the office. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say it was only because they had nowhere else to go, but it felt like that. And it felt like a lot of the things, the agents who did business, I studied them, and it seemed like it was a miracle that they could tie their shoelaces. They just didn't seem to have an incredible wealth of knowledge or skill. They didn't have an accumulation of how do you do it the right way. They just kind of bumbled through and did stuff. And because the industry is very oriented towards copycat learning, typically an agent looks around to see who's doing the most business, and then they try to emulate their behavior. And yet that person, even in this day and age, probably doesn't know what it is they do, other than they do something. Mm-hmm. And the successful agents didn't have to possess an incredible amount of skill or talent. They just worked. And I found that the majority of the people that are in the real estate business, even today, they're good people. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not malicious. They're not mean. They're not mean-spirited. Mm-hmm. But they're also lacking in the areas of business management skills and selling skills. And there's really nowhere within the industry that forces them to be held accountable to a behavior pattern that is conducive to growing a business.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Greg, I'm sure you can agree. Part of the reason that people get into real estate oftentimes is because they specifically do not want to be held to a behavior pattern.
Yeah, all they really want to do is they want to get away from the daily grind, 9 to 5. I don't want to have a boss anymore. I want to do my own thing. But
that's right.
They get in. It's like a dog that's chasing a car. They would catch the car. They're like, what the heck do I do with it now? Because then they get in. They're like, okay, so I'm running my own business.
Right.
What next?
Well,
okay.
And I think the brokers and the companies are mostly responsible for the allowance of an agent to do as they wish. They treat an agent who passed a test at the same level of skill. They treat them at the same level of skill as a 25-year veteran, allowing them to involve themselves in transactions that they have no business involving themselves in. But as the brokers and the owners will say, but they're independent contractors, they can do what they want.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
No, they're a liability to the nth degree, and that's one of the things that our team strives, just like you, Scott, is that our saying is that we try to keep good people away from bad brokers, because there's so many people out there that they're like a loaded gun walking around ready to fire, but they don't know where they're aiming. They're going to hit and kill somebody because they don't know what they're doing. They're going to take someone's largest or one of their largest investments in their life, and they're going to absolutely destroy it because they just don't know the protocol. They don't know what to do next.
Correct.
And that is it is astounding. We recently tried to bring some people onto our team, some additional agents, and we never thought we were anything special, right? We just thought this is how we've always done the business. My father taught us since we were, for the last 16 years on how to do business the right way. And we brought some individuals onto our team that are no longer with us, and the difference, like you're talking about, is staggering when it comes down to handling a transaction. Most of the agents we work with in our area, they honestly don't know what they're doing. They 100% do not know what they're doing. They cannot grow a business if it was given to them.
Mm-hmm. All right. And unfortunately, for those agents who do know what they're doing, who are on the listing side of a relationship, their destiny is somewhat controlled by the inexperienced, unprofessional, can't control them agent who's representing a buyer that brings it in as a co-op sale.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the way it is. It's like, how do you protect yourself from that idiot?
Yeah.
I love how you emphasized idiot.
Yeah, idiot. Yeah, because I get involved in this stuff, and one of my recent podcast episodes on how to sell more houses was a lady. Her name's Regan, and sweet girl over in California. The episode itself was about a buyer conversion common situation where the seller says, "I'd like to buy one first before I sell mine." I walked her through the dialogue, how to do it, how to put it together the right way, and she followed my instructions and was grateful. And then she unleashed about how hard it is to deal with the other agents, and her complaint went on because what she said, and I've heard this from many agents, if you take that equation out of it, the untrained, unprofessional, uncontrollable, incompetent agent who's going to bring the buyer, that's awful, but we have to live with that.
100%.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I noticed something, I think you've talked about this before, Scott, is what if you're going to continue with real estate as an independent contractor basis, where the whole industry is basically just a bunch of independent contractors, the best answer for an individual agent is to find somebody and be their apprentice. Learn the business.
Right. If I could just get on my soapbox for a minute.
Go ahead.
Please.
Okay. You guys, have either of you two been involved in any other business other than real estate?
Yes.
Okay.
Kind of.
Harsh. I heard Greg kind of hesitate now. Well, let me reference something. Within all these sales organizations that you've ever been exposed to, whether it's Mary Kay Cosmetics, Amway, or a knife sales, or insurance sales, furniture sales, all or investment securities. Every industry, with the exception of real estate, takes a new trainee as an apprentice and makes them go through a proving practice agenda. They actually have to learn how to talk to people. They have to do stuff. And the whole process is to bring them to the point to where they qualify to actually deal with a customer. Which, of course, that's unheard of in the real estate business. But more important is this. This is the only business where the person that's expected to go find the business has to conduct the business, collect the money from the business, and offer all the customer support from the business before turning the money over to someone else who has nothing to do with any of it. So when you think about it, what's the responsibility of a broker? I mean, they're the business owner in a sense, and yet the brokerage itself is not telling the agent what to do. They're not telling them when to do it. They're not saying if you don't do this. They're mostly just in charge of keeping them out of real estate jail. But they're not managing those agents' activities. They're not holding them accountable in a productive way, and they're not laying down the law saying, look, I need you in here at 9 o'clock every morning and staying until 8 o'clock at night. They're not, go to a furniture company and interview all their salespeople like I did. And what you're going to find is that there's a lot of other companies that have independent contractor status for their salespeople, and they tell them when to show up, when to leave, They give them a draw. They pay them a commission. And real estate is the only one where we let the main sales team, the main sales body, go out and do whatever they want and wait till they bring us money, and then we clean up the mess.
Mm-hmm. Why is that, Scott? I mean, why are we like that? Because that is 100% true. I watch my controller here in our office, Irene. She's a wonderful woman, very intelligent, but she is pulling her hair out by agents doing dumbass things that they can easily be trained away from. When we get our test, nothing in that test has anything to do with how to run an actual business, how to stay out of real estate jail, as you have said. Why are we like that? Have you refined that down?
Oh, hell yeah.
Bring it.
Yeah, part of the why we do it is because agents themselves are given this undeserving respect at the moment they pass their license. And yet, the license that they get is nothing more than a state-mandated requirement. It has nothing to do with how to make money or how to deal with people. It has to do with how to fill out forms and stay out of jail. And because that license seems to be the passing grade for permission to do whatever you want, it really has become an absolute abomination by the brokerages to allow agents, because of their IRS tax status, to do as they want, when they want, with whomever they want, as long as they don't violate the law. And in comparison to all the other businesses out there, when I was in another business, the home improvement business, the one that I had built up, a very successful business, here's how it worked. We had a team of people that made phone calls. Now, that was our telemarketing operation. The people who made phone calls, they didn't go on appointments. They made phone calls. What they did for a living is come in, sit down, make calls for 4 hours, and turn their information over. And there were people to watch them, train them, supervise them, manage them, and pay them. And that's what they did. You with me so far? After they made an appointment, we sent a salesperson on that appointment. The salesperson didn't make the appointment. The salesperson's job was, you get dressed and you get prepped for going on an appointment. And every day, each salesperson was going on 3 sets a day. They didn't make appointments. They weren't telemarketers. They went on appointments. But after they went on the appointment and sold the job, then a service rep went in and resold it to make sure that the sellers knew what they bought. I mean, the buyers, they knew what they bought, and they measured the windows and they measured the job and they placed the order for the materials, not the salesman. The salesman didn't measure the windows, and the person who got the appointment didn't measure the windows. A third person did. And then when the product came in to be installed, a crew installed it. Not the installer, not the measurer, not the salesman, not the telemarketer. And then when they got done with the job, then the salesman may go back and inspect it to make sure that the people are happy. But you notice that no one person did every part of it. There was a company behind it that coordinated the whole thing and provided the administrative support, and there was profit generated. Now look at real estate. In real estate, your agent is expected to figure out how to go get business. Yeah, the broker might point in the direction of training, like go here, go there, do this, do that. But pretty much, they don't make them do it. They don't make them do anything. They don't make them show up. They don't make them learn how to talk to people on the phone. They don't make them learn how to build rapport before they're ever allowed to go on an appointment. They take them, and in the very beginning, they say, well, gosh, if you've got any buyers or any sellers, by all means, get them, close them, bring money.
Yeah.
And they leave it all entirely up to that agent. And that, to me, becomes the difference.
Well, and I think, I don't know if you would agree or not. My perception, not being a broker, but just as a former agent and from the outside looking in, working with teams and things like that, my perception is that the broker does not necessarily care because they believe that they will attract somewhere between 3, maybe 7 to 10 transactions if they're really lucky a year by their personal sphere of influence. And so their concern, unfortunately, is not for the individual success of the agent, it's for the overall health of the brokerage, and is amassing a number of agents that each do 3-5 deals a year.
Well, that's right.
I would say that is true, Matt. And Scott, what you just laid out for us, I believe that's exactly how Redfin operates. They have individual people doing exactly individual different tasks. And, the agents, hey, here are your 4 appointments for the day. Go. Here are your listing appointments. Go. Here are your buyers. Go. It makes logical sense. And that's why real estate agents don't have a life for the most part. We were talking about in the beginning, a lot of the agents, they don't do anything. Average agent does 2 deals a year, $35,000 in income. And they sit and they come into the office and for 2 reasons. 1, to get away from their spouse, and 2, to drink the free coffee.
They free. I didn't know there's free coffee. Shit, I'm going to go.
Yeah, come over to
We
my
didn't say it
office,
was
man.
good coffee.
Hey, I brew Starbucks and Pete's in my office. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Well, that's an exception. I'll be there. I'll be there in 20.
Actually, you will be here in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
But if there is a way, and I'm sure you're going to break it down for us, and I'm almost 100% sure you've already done this. How can we turn real estate on its head and make people have a life, and make money, and have some fun?
Well, you're in a perfect situation to do that because you offer personal coaching to agents throughout the country, don't you?
I do, and I'm the corporate trainer for our office, for our brokerage.
Okay, and because I don't do that, I don't have any desire to coach people, because to me coaching is more of an accountability relationship, and that accountability relationship is something that every agent desperately needs, but they don't have. But leading into the generic answer goes something like this, and I'm going to start with a question. As an active agent, Greg, let me just ask you something. If I had a competing brokerage in your town and I offered you the following job, here's what I need, Greg. I need you to go on 5 sit-down appointments every single week, and that's all I want you to do. I don't want you to make a single call, and I don't want you to deal with paperwork, and I don't want you to deal with customer service issues, but I will put you on 5 sit-down appointments, 5 bona fide, legitimate, motivated sit-down appointments with sellers who want to move, 5 a week. How appealing is that at the moment? How are we doing so far?
I have just quit my brokerage.
Right. Okay. So, but you'll never hear a brokerage say that, will you?
No, and it sucks, because that would be amazing.
It is. Now, I've already done this with 3 separate brokerages in cities. I can tell you where the cities are, but I can't disclose what the name of the brokerages are. But what is changing in the industry is we're going to move away from a lackadaisical, let them do what they want to do, to the smart brokerages that operate like a business. Because as a business, my feeling is every other sales business does it that way, not the real estate way. They do it the right way. They have an operation. They have people who do one function, schedule appointments, and they have another function, which is go on appointments, and they're not the same people. Because what happens when the same person has to find an appointment and go on an appointment is it's a completely different skill set. The skill set of showmanship, being on an appointment, going into someone else's house, sitting them down at the kitchen table, talking about painful situations like owing more on the house than it's worth, or going through a divorce, a death, a loss of someone, a gain of someone, all that stuff is hard. And that skill in itself is the highest valued skill in the industry. And yet, what is it that keeps an average agent from going on 5 appointments a week?
Prospecting, follow-up, paperwork,
because they don't,
all the minutia.
Right, because they're too busy doing the other stuff. So what do they end up doing? They get so busy doing the stuff that doesn't make them money that they don't have time to do the things that would improve their skills. Here's what I know about going on 5 appointments a week, because I did it. I'm not just talking out my rear end saying this is what you should do. I've done it, and I've gotten other agents to do it. When you go on 5 appointments a week, you get really good at being picky and choosy of who you work with. Now, just think about the benefit there. So if you go on 5 appointments, you're probably going to find that 1 or 2 of them aren't worth your time and trouble. But if you only go on 1 appointment, you don't have that option. You become compromised and you work with people you should never be working with. The overpriced listing, the unmotivated buyer. So when you go on a lot of appointments, I was able to get listings priced to sell, so they took less time to deal with. I got sellers' expectations lowered to the point to where I didn't have to show up ever again, because that's how I educated them. They never saw me again. And I was able to get above average commissions because I was able to logically sit down and prove to them that by hiring me, you get my performance record. Therefore, you're going to end up with more money in your pocket than anyone else who even charges less money than me. Because in the end, what matters most is not what I keep out of the deal, but what you end up with.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you get good at that when the average agent goes on one sit-down appointment per month? That's their average. The average number of sit-downs they go on is one, and the one they went on was an accident. So how much skill are they developing on being able to talk to people, build rapport with people, find a problem, offer a solution, and agree to sit down and talk about the solution? They're
unable
they never
to.
get there.
Yeah, they're unable to. They don't invest in themselves is the sad part. They don't read. They don't go to conferences. They don't, network with other smarter, more skilled individuals. They try to stay in their own sphere, their comfort bubble, or hang out with people that are lesser than them, because then they're in a superior status, which makes their ego feel good, but it's not doing anything for either the industry or themselves. And they feel great about that one appointment because Bob in the cubicle next to him didn't go on one this month.
That's right. And it's one. And it's like, really?
One.
That's your bragging point?
Yeah. I went on one appointment today. What about you? I went on 5 this week. Oh, crap. No, they don't want to hear that. But I am more than interested to hear more from you. I can tell you that. I'm sitting here writing notes fast as I can think.
Well, Scott, let me ask you this. I mean, it seems to me from the people that I know and that I work with, there are people that are trying to make that transformation. I mean, I can name one right off the bat that has that assembly line, that exact mentality. He's now the number one team owner in his state. They probably do more deals out of a side office with 5 rooms than most, like 300 agents in the brokerage. So it does exist. People are catching on. There's business people that are entering real estate they're seeing that opportunity. Now, what they're doing is, for the most part, they're staying under a brokerage because of the liability reasons, because they're only giving up 2 to 3% of the overall transaction to have someone else have all the liability. They make, 5% of the transaction, let's say, at the end, and they have all the systems set up. Anyway, I mean, do you see, is this the new answer? Do you see that as a good thing, or is that just squeezing the agents out because they're not setting up those systems themselves? They're relying on somebody else to do it for them.
I think as long as the brokerages allow agents to meander about within the industry with hopes of them doing a deal or two, we're never going to escape that cycle. It's kind of analogous to a typical agent's attitude towards an overpriced listing. They justify it by saying, well, it might be overpriced, but at least I've got something.
Yeah,
and I might get some calls. Well, in most real estate offices, you could increase the productivity immediately by just slicing off the bottom half of the agents who don't do anything, because they're dragging down the overall production of the office.
Yep.
So until a broker grows the kahunas they need to be able to say, look, we have a minimum standard, we have guidelines. If you don't do this, you don't get that. They're never going to change. But with that said, the brokers themselves, I mean, I can tell you from structural that if you were in the production of meth, and I say that liberally, and your whole objective was,
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, feed the meth to your agents to the point to where they're addicted to it. Feed it to them. Now they're addicted, and now you have leverage over them, because if you do what I tell you to do, I'll give you some more. And if you can follow along with that sick sort of analogy, because it was a little bit out there in the morbid world, then you have something on them. But understanding what is that one thing that every agent would crawl through mud to get to.
Leads. Yeah.
Nope. Go one step further. I'm going to tell you, this is going to... Appointments. And I have transitioned companies where instead of you generating leads for agents who frankly don't deserve and don't know what to do with them, think about this one for a minute. Why not take a company approach to managing the entire appointment process? So when that agent comes in the door and you say, Greg, if you want 5 appointments a week, because that'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
Oh, that'd be amazing.
And you don't do anything else. I mean, yes, when you take the listing, you got to turn in the stuff. But, when you get an offer, you got to present it and get it negotiated and accepted. But for the most part, you're at the elite level. You're the elite listing level. But here's the hook. In order for you to get to that job, you got to do a 90-day apprenticeship training program.
Done.
And
when do I start?
see, now it makes sense, doesn't it? And oddly, within most companies, let's just take this one for a walk in the park for a minute. How does relocation work in most companies today, Greg? The relocation department. Tell me how that works.
You mean regards to
to the agent? Yeah, like if I'm an agent and I come to your firm because just make believe that you're a firm that's got a long-standing relocation reputation, and your relocation department is like one of the first benefits that you throw in front of a new agent recruit. That why you want to be here is, well, we've got this relocation deal and we've got relocation. So what's the requirement as a new agent for me to get in on that gravy train? What do I got to do?
Probably gonna have to show up and actually behave. I'm a little lost on your question here because we don't do a lot of relocation out in this neck of the woods. But I'm assuming you tell me, man.
I'm going to tell you because first of all, in order for you to be eligible for the relocation leads, you have to go through the training program. The relocation group that you belong to has a training requirement. Says the agent must be trained first, and they go to training, and they have to pay for the training, and they have to pass the training to prove they're eligible. And after they do that, then they got to be willing to take the relocation offered to them. So you might get a buyer who's relocating into town. You may get a seller who's relocating out of town. But when you take that buyer or seller, you have to give up a substantial amount of your commission to get it.
35%, I think, is standard.
And sometimes even more. I mean, I've seen companies where the agents who were getting the relocations not only had to give up a percentage of the commission, but they had to revert to a 50-50 split with the company as well.
Oh.
So they might have been on a 90-10, but that relocation buyer or relocation seller, they had to revert to a 50-50 minus 35% fee. Oh. And yet they were happy to take it. Now, I look at that and I said, so we've already got this example within the structure that says there's a relocation model within most larger companies that goes a little bit beyond normal, because what they're saying is, here, Greg, I'm going to give you a listing. All you got to do is go out there and get it. Oh, and by the way, you're going to make like 1/3 of what you normally make. Is that going to be a problem? And what's the normal response from the agent?
No, I want all my commission.
Well, no, they actually say, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. So if you've got somebody, if you're talking about somebody that's already busy, if they've paid the price and they've put the lead generation systems in place, and you come to them and say, I'll give you a lead that's a 30% referral fee, and they're saying, well, I pay 15 to 20% to generate all these other leads over here. It really depends on whether you're talking to a top agent or the average agent. The average agent will probably fall all over themselves to take that referral deal because they have not enough going on to even pick and choose their lead sources.
You are correct.
That's where my mindset comes from, because we don't need that business. And if they're going to try to take advantage of me and my time, go somewhere else.
Yeah, but the average agent will. But Scott, let me ask you, I mean, given that, I mean, so the average agent coming into the business, unless they really do their homework, they don't really understand that there are teams out there that have that structure. If there is a brokerage in their market that has anything close to that, they'd have to, good luck throwing a rock in any direction and hitting it. You're not going to find it, you're going to have to do some significant research. So the average agent coming into the business has no idea any of that stuff exists or the problems. They come into it, and Greg, you and I talked to an agent here just within the last couple of weeks we started working with, and he genuinely assumed and expected when he signed on with the brokerage office that they were going to help him with his marketing materials, and they were going to help him with this and they're going to help him with that. Like, people just don't know.
They don't.
Yeah, so give me a scenario. Just play out the scenario. So Scot Kenkel parachutes into real estate in 2015. You're 25, 30 years old. Let's set aside the whole issue of like what your disc personality and stuff is. We'll get into that another time. I can't wait to talk about that stuff. But let's just assume you're the average agent. You have no idea what's going on, but you know that there's a problem. So who do you seek out? What do you do?
Well, I think for the brokers that I've worked with their business model, the way we structured it was simply this. The recruiting process includes a 90-day to 180-day apprenticeship relationship. And during that apprenticeship relationship between the agent and the broker, they don't have to have the real estate license done, but they can start building the skills that they need. But this apprenticeship is the period of time that they are mandated on hours that they sit at a phone and make phone calls. And they're given lists of houses to go visit and put a piece of paper in their door. It's all pretty simple stuff. But what they're learning is the ability to pick up the phone, get into the habit of talking to people, building rapport. And you don't have to have a real estate license to call people. The misgivings within the industry would say if you don't have a license, you can't call anybody. And if they're on the do not call list, you can't call them either. But it doesn't say you can't call people that invite you to call them. It doesn't say that. So what I have found is that this apprentice period should always be in place between the time the agent so-called starts and the time the agent is signed off to be allowed to receive the appointments that I earlier teased you with. So if Greg is willing to crawl through mud, here's the process. For 10 hours a week until you complete the process, which is going to take anywhere from 90 to 180 days, for 10 hours of every week, you're going to follow a prescripted dialing scenario and door knocking scenario. And if you say to me in the beginning, well, I don't want to do that, well, guess what? You don't have to. I'm just never going to give you any crack or meth.
Right.
But now,
and that's exactly what you teach your agents, Greg. I mean, that's what we're putting together is a team of people to work with Greg in the Bay Area that are committed to, and that's kind of the ratio we came up with actually, to about 2 hours a day, a combination of door knocking and mojo dialer, like circle prospecting, expireds, whatever.
Right.
2 hours a day. And you're right, Scott. I mean, if you have somebody, and once you get to the level where you're bringing that number of leads, if you're really prospecting for 2 hours a day, you're going to get better at it. Number one, you're going to set more appointments. Then you're going to start taking more appointments than you know what to do with. And then all of a sudden you're going to have the money to hire someone to handle all the paperwork. And all of a sudden all you're doing is prospecting and going on appointments.
But you're still thinking the traditional way.
Because the commission structure is such that you have to, brokerages have not set up a way to get around that. Like for the average agent, they have to go through that pain of that level until they can look at diverting some of their income over to hiring somebody, which is something I want to ask you about, because a lot of people, like, this is the Holy Grail, having someone call, a telemarketing team call to set appointments for agents. I mean, how many guys can you think of that have made this work offhand? Like Tim Heil. I mean, the list is the list gets pretty short pretty quick, at least I think it does. So correct me if I'm wrong, but why do so many agents fail at that exact thing, hiring somebody else to set appointments for them?
Because they've never mastered the bullshit factor. Here's the thing that I would insert into this conversation. When I bring on, for the benefit of a client's brokerage, when I bring on this whole idea of an apprenticeship program, their first initial problem with it is, how do we fund it? Who's going to pay them? And if we're going to ask them to do 10 hours of stuff every week, how do we compensate them for that? Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at it from such a totally different way. You see, the idea of them making appointments, I never said they get to go on them, did I?
Right.
No, you did not.
Right. And why would you let them? See, this is the fallacy in the business. Why would you let someone unskilled, untrained go on an appointment that they don't know what to do? Until they've gone through the apprentice, until they've mastered the first phase of it, which is where, Greg hired them 10 hours a week, and after 30 days, they've done everything Greg told them to do, and they're cranking out 5 to 10 appointments every week. They could then move on to the next step. But they're not going on those appointments. Who's going on those appointments?
The top dog.
Whoever the company says deserves to get the meth. So then is the next step step for that agent, that brand new agent that's been making the calls, is the next step up for them to then start going along with that other agent on the appointments to learn? The second stage of it is they go on appointments to observe, and they do that for the next 10 appointments. They go on, they still make their appointments, they do their 10 hours a week, but they watch Greg, and they have to identify all the steps that Greg has done, and they have to report back on what those were. So they learn through observation and review. If any new agent watched Greg go on 10 appointments or watched me go on 10 appointments, or any agent who knows what they're doing for that matter, if they watched someone go on 10 appointments and had to report back what they saw, they would become incredibly aware of so much stuff. And the next step is they lead the appointment and they get reviewed by the other person. So now they've gone on 20 appointments. 20
like an actual training program. Imagine that.
Yeah. Well, duh. Yeah.
Wow.
But we took away one component of this.
Okay.
They are not the agent. They may have a license, but they have not been signed off yet to be allowed to be a lead dog. So what they've generated for the first 30 days might be a dozen appointments. The second 30 days, they generated another 20 appointments. If you put that into the spreadsheet about the value of taking an appointment and selling it, because you don't want to give it away, but selling it to another lead agent or using it in an addictive way, there's a lot of money there. And once that agent has surpassed the ability to make the appointments, they would be entitled to a referral fee, but you don't give up control of that client. That client does not belong to the agent just because they made an appointment. And the ownership of the client is an abused situation, because who owns the client legally? Who is the owner, the broker or the agent?
Yeah, the broker.
But when have you ever found a brokerage that actually takes the time to follow up with every client?
Oh, zero.
But what do they do instead? They pound it into the heads of the agents that it's the agent's responsibility to stay in touch, follow up, generate leads. And yet the brokerage is the one that should do that, not the agent.
Yeah, and I agree that so that model is coming to real estate, and people are figuring it out, and people are starting teams that are based on that model. Here's the question. This is the problem that the teams are having, which is they're having trouble recruiting people out of real estate, no matter how new they are, because the people that are in real estate are a self-selected portion of the population that already are more independent and have a higher risk tolerance than average, right? So, and they're not necessarily in a position where they can just put these people on salary and just put them on the phone and say, look, I'm going to pay you $20 an hour, set me a couple of appointments a day, 2 hours a day, and then lay out the cash to hire them outright. So they're trying to recruit people, and that putting that carrot on the end of the stick so that they're willing to prospect and set appointments in the hopes of eventually then taking over as an agent themselves. So getting back to kind of the personality thing of real estate that we talked about to begin with, like what should team leaders be looking for in agents that they want to plug into that type of apprenticeship system?
I think every agent they hire should have to prove their own abilities to build rapport and change behavior. I think the test for that is easier proven on the phone than it is in person. Everybody claims they're good in person, but if you can't build rapport with a for sale by owner on the phone, you probably shouldn't be out there talking to them in person. The fact that you can
I've heard that before. Just when you're interviewing somebody that's a calling assistant, don't even do a video call. You only care about what they sound like on the phone, and can they communicate over the phone.
And if they can communicate over the phone, and they can account for their time, and they can make the calls that they said they would, and they are able to do those things, then you can improve their skills to the point where they kind of like they're in an apprentice program. If they're not willing to sit down and make calls, they're probably not going to be sticking around long enough for you to feed them the meth. Yeah. So you can. It's a balancing act that says most agents don't want to spend money on hiring people. Most agents are not skilled at running a business. Most agents, they're nice people. They're not hardcore salespeople. So where's the loose end? And that is, if you have a team leader who is a proven business person, they understand the basics of business and running a business and growing a business, it's a lot easier for them to comprehend I need to go out there and find some people who can do separate functions, administrative, lead generation, and conversion. And I need someone who can be my next in line for going on appointments, because that should be the most coveted position. And some of these positions, if they pay people to do them, it's easier to hold them accountable to doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. I mean, a lot of agents want to be a team. They hear the word team, which is just a funny name, but they want to build a team, and they want to build their marketing, and they want to build their web presence, and they're doing all of this with no sense of how will you profit, and how will you hold on to the agents that you manicure. How do you do that?
Yeah,
it's back to the meth.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, if you're hiring people for specific functions and you only train them for specific functions, you'll have a super low turnover rate, because you're not training them in all aspects of the business, expecting them to give away 30% of their income, but training them to basically go off on their own and make 100% of it.
That's right.
And I've seen that borne out with a team that I work with closely in Nebraska. So, I mean, their agents, that team has extremely low turnover, because all their agents do, and they haven't hit the place where they're setting appointments necessarily, but the agents, all they do is prospect, go on appointments, and negotiate deals. So They literally don't know. Like, some of them have literally never installed a lockbox, never put a sign in the yard. They're not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that does work. And we have to wrap it up. We've got another call to jump on here in 8 minutes. Scott, seriously, I could talk to you forever, and I want to connect outside of this, because I think there's some huge lessons that we need to learn, because in the coaching business that we're building, because we're trying to, I guess, emulate a team model and what brokerages should be doing in providing those services to agents, but we have not gone as far as what you're prescribing to that level of apprenticeship program. But you're exactly right. That's what the business needs.
It does. And Scott, I've done a lot of interviews. I've talked to a lot of the top agents around the country. My father's dragged me to events all over the place. I have been riveted in this conversation. My curiosity is piqued like nothing before. And like Matt said, I would love to connect with you outside of this. Pick your brain if you'd be willing to.
I would be willing to. I'm very generous with people who are interested, and I am almost generous way beyond normal. For anyone who shows an interest in pushing it forward, because it helps all of us.
Oh yeah, I'm extremely interested. I know Matt is.
Yeah.
So,
well, Scott, give us the just your calls to action and how people can connect with you, and then give us an idea. I don't know if you're speaking at or attending any major events, but obviously let us know kind of where you'll be out and about. I'd love to connect with you, and if you're at any of the upcoming real estate events this year.
Well, at the moment, I'm not scheduled for much. I still maintain a very low travel schedule for reasons that make it difficult for me to get on planes.
Sure.
I do have a podcast, and it is simply called How to Sell More Houses. It's free for those that don't understand that. And you can just go to www.howtosellmorehouses.com, and there it is. And there are, I think I'm on episode number, I'm in the 90s, so I'm almost hitting that 100 mark. And, I put all the information there. There's not an obligation. I don't oversell anything. I do have a workshop and an upcoming book, but the workshop is live. It goes about every 6 months. I do a live version of it. Anyone who has ever participated in a previous one gets to repeat it over and over at no cost. And it's called Painless Prospecting Workshop.com, www. And it's really something that I feel strong about. I've had hundreds of students go through it, and I just launched it this year, so it's new. The one thing before we wrap this up is, if any of your listeners do drift over there to that workshop, I have a coupon code specific for your listeners. If they enter the word uncensored, then it'll remove $200 from the enrollment fee, which is currently at $397. And it is a very high value. It does not require me for them to get started. They can take it. It's self-paced, but I do a live version of it twice a year where I kick butt and I make people do stuff and I answer problems, and that's it.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
man.
I was gonna say, and I have to echo what Greg said. I mean, I'm the same way. I've talked to and interviewed a lot of top agents and brokers, team leaders from all over the country. I've been very, very, very impressed with not just the depth of experience and the background that you have, but just the unique business-like approach, which I've already always admired about. There's a handful of other people in real estate that I've run across that have that approach, and it's completely transforming because the business needs to be transformed. So anyway, I mean, if for our listeners, you may not recognize it, maybe you haven't been in the business long enough to recognize it, but seriously, Scott is someone worth listening to. I will go back and listen to every single one of his podcasts. Go to the Painless Prospecting Workshop, check that out, and get involved in the live broadcast, because it's obvious that he has a different way of looking at real estate that I think our listeners can really, really benefit from. And just so that we'll hopefully be talking to Scott again and incorporating what he has to say into the way that we bring on clients and the agents that we work with in the Bay Area. We want to incorporate those lessons so that you can get to that point where you're mostly going on appointments. I mean, that's the goal.
It is, and yeah, Scott, thank you, man. You truly, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are both welcome. I look forward to doing more stuff with you.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening to the special interview with Scot Kenkel. I hope you got a ton of value out of it. If you have any follow-up questions, hit us up on Facebook on our Real Estate Uncensored page, or follow us on Twitter and Periscope. Greg's is at McDaniel Systems. Mine is at Broken Funnel. And then remember, as always, subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher. Check us out online, McDanielRealEstateSystems.com. You can binge on past episodes. You can stay up to date on our weekly group coaching calls, free videos, video courses, live prospecting sessions, a bunch more. Thanks so much, guys, and we will see you on the next episode.